city of Davis gave us this room, so we want to thank them. And being this is about Yolo County, we have done a little research with the help of Yolo County, and we're going to provide you some information about the county that they provided us. So this is an educational forum about Yolo County as well as an election forum. And also we want to thank all the citizens who provided us questions for the forum. We had over 26 people provide 87 different questions. You can see on the slide that a lot of them were about climate change. With respect to climate change, the Sierra Club, the Yolano chapter of the Sierra Club has already posed to the candidates 20 questions about the environment and climate change. So we have one question, but we wanted to cover a lot of the other areas as well. A little bit about the League of Women Voters. There was a chapter in the league of the league in Davis for 50-something years. It dissolved in 2014, Mary Jo Bryan, who's the current president, decided to restart it, and she asked a few people, including Matt Williams, Georgina Valencia, and myself, to help her restart it. We got official recognition from the California League of Women Voters in August or September, and since then we have put on a number of different events. This is our first election forum. So, this forum is co-sponsored by Subanergy. Subanergy is a website. It's an experiment in democracy. Our main sort of function at the moment is to provide an online election forums which are connected with a traditional forum like this one. So we have on our website the start of an online forum, and we have a number of the questions that we will not be able to cover today will be put onto the website for the candidates to respond to. We have put 4 questions from the overall list for the candidates to respond to this week. I'll turn it over to Matt Williams to talk about a little bit about the county, Yolo County.
One of the things that the candidates and ourselves have all found is that when you're going out and talking to people, they're not really sure what the county does compared to what the city does. You know, what is the difference between your city, state, and the county government? And I reached out to the California Council of Counties, and they really didn't have anything, but the Yolo Administrator's Office pointed to this video, which I'll provide the link to anyone. I get to play it, but we'll use the time for questions. But this video is about Texas, but it really does talk about how the three governments all overlap and complement one another. Yolo County also provided a snapshot of the kinds of things that they do. It covers the whole county, which is broken into 5 supervisor districts. We're discussing District 4 here, which is the green. I'm colorblind, so if it's not green, I apologize. The green section down here at the bottom that goes all the way down into no man's land. Some people think of Davis as no man's land, but the real no man's land is the farmland south of Davis. The district, there's a larger picture of District 4, and for there's probably most of the people here live in the city of Davis. This is this portion of Davis that is in District 4. It goes from Highway 113 on the west, north of Covell, then down J Street and L Street to below I-80 and all of South Davis is in the District 4. The parks, the county does a number of different things. Parks and recreation, they manage 15 different parks in the county. They have law enforcement, the sheriff patrols land, sea, and air, does investigations, maintains the jail, provides the coroner services. In addition to law enforcement, there is the district attorney's office, which does investigations, restorative justice, and prosecutions and defense. They maintain a public defender's office. Health and Human Services is one that most of us here in the room have touched on one way or another, providing a variety of services for adults, children, and families. This is one of the areas where clearly the county provides services that cities don't generally do. So there is some overlap, and indeed we got questions that address some of that overlap. They also deal with environmental health. Any of you who are involved in some of the changes that are going on in food delivery, where there's a discussion of home kitchens, environmental health is making sure that if there's a business that's using a non-traditional way of delivering food to us, that it's safe and healthy. There are capital projects. The county has just built a new courthouse. The old courthouse is being repurposed so that it can continue to provide services. And then the largest industry in Yolo County is agriculture, and there's a whole lot of interaction between the county government and agriculture for pesticide enforcement, inspection of crops, pest management, etc. And then finally, we end up with emergency management services. Here, the city and the county do coordinate with one another so that the county is making maximum use and efficient use of city resources to be able to provide emergency services. And finally, animal services, animal control, shelter, and adoptions. If you are interested in more information, I'm going to personally shout out to Jenny Tan in the administrator's office. She's absolutely fantastic. She was the one who found the Texas video, and the California counties are quickly moving to create a similar one for California.
Okay, let's see, we're going to just go over the forum format briefly.
Go to the next slide. There's going to be opening statements of 2 minutes each. Then we're going to cover up to 7 questions that we have prepared beforehand that were communicated to the candidates this week. And then we'll have audience questions. And at the end of that period, we'll have closing statements of 1 minute each. There'll be the 7 questions. The candidates will have 90 seconds to respond, and then there'll be follow-up rounds if they choose to do so. Each follow-up response will be 40 seconds, and they have up to 10 opportunities to follow up. So they just have to raise their hand. Yeah, they have just to raise their hand to make a follow-up response. Okay, go to the next slide. You can see the 7 different question categories on the screen. There's climate change, seniors, finance, criminal justice reform, interjurisdictional collaboration, land use and housing, and water. We will be taking 3x5 audience questions on 3x5 cards. Those questions must be addressed to all 3 candidates. Donna Neville in the back has 3x5 cards. If you need one, we'll be collecting them close to the end, around 4:10. We'll be collecting them, and then Donna will be sorting through them and providing them to Michelle. The closing statements, 1 minute each, will come after the audience questions. The audience questions we have about a half an hour allotted for, so we'll be hoping to finish at 4:45. The candidates will be able to greet you if you have specific questions out in the courtyard after the forum is completed. Okay, Michelle.
Okay, it's my understanding that Linda Deos has been randomly chosen to be the first one to answer the question. So good afternoon to you all. And beginning with the opening statement, please tell us how your life experiences, either professional or personal, will inform your work as a supervisor. Given your background, what should we specifically expect to see occur as a result?
Well, first of all, thank you all for coming in here today on this gorgeous wintry day at 70 degrees in California. Well, my name is Linda Deos, and I'm a consumer protection attorney by day. I have spent my career representing people on the margins, and that's a career of over 25 years. I've successfully sued big banks for mortgage fraud, defended employees who have endured sexual harassment and discrimination. I'm running for supervisor to bring a new voice and fresh ideas to the board, a voice that hasn't been heard in over 10 years. Over the past, several months now, I have walked nearly every street in our community, and I've spoken with now thousands of people about what their top priorities are for Yolo County. I've listened and heard your concerns about health care, affordable housing, child care, and the climate crisis and our criminal justice system. Your frustrations that no one seems to be listening, and your hope that real change is possible. I know that people in the community are engaged, I'm looking at you, and eager to be more involved. And as your supervisor, I will work to ensure that we are all working together in partnership and in collaboration. As your supervisor, I will work with you to fight for more affordable housing. I will ensure that a major portion of our campus funds are going to increase child care. I will fight to put an end to cash bail in the county. I believe the climate crisis is real, and that Yolo County is uniquely positioned to make a difference with that. I am very concerned that the current board is far removed from the urgency of these problems and is not digging into real solutions. I know that together we can build a better Davis and Yolo County that works for everyone, and I would be honored to have your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Our process is to then go to the right, and therefore Jim Provenza is the next one to provide his opening statement. Thank you.
2 minutes.
Yes, please, 2 minutes, sorry.
Good afternoon. I'm very pleased to be here. Thank the League of Women Voters. Oh, okay. I'm gonna start over. Good afternoon. I'm pleased to be here, and I want to thank the League of Women Voters for sponsoring this forum. I also wanted to say a word about the death of Kobe Bryant, his daughter Gianna, that Kobe was a person who inspired young people for many years in overcoming adversity, and would hope that we will remember him today as we proceed with this forum. I have been dedicated throughout my career to helping vulnerable populations. I became a lawyer in 1980, and from that time I particularly focused on issues of concern to women and children. I handled hundreds of domestic violence cases and cases involving abuse of children, taking those cases through court to the point where there was either adequate protection or I would fight further in court until there was. I also handled civil rights cases, discrimination in housing and employment, because as you know, homelessness is often caused by discrimination when someone's pushed out of housing. I did some major cases where ethnic minorities were excluded or kicked out of housing, threatening homelessness. was able to preserve their housing and get consent decrees to prevent those practices from occurring in the future. I went to work for the legislature, first as a counsel to the Senate Judiciary Committee and the Assembly Public Safety Committee, and then later as a lobbyist for district attorneys. I was responsible for stalking legislation, I was responsible for the hate crime law, and I was responsible for numerous domestic violence bills, including legislation that guns be taken away from perpetrators of domestic violence. I would like to see us continue the work that we have done in terms of protecting victims, fighting for child care, and fighting for women and children in Yolo County, and I'll discuss that further as we go along. Thank you.
Thank you. And for your opening statement, David Abramson, you're next.
Right.
Yeah, thanks everyone for coming out on this beautiful day. It's really an honor to be able to be here and to share what our visions for Yolo County are, and I think Linda and Jim as well in the League of Women Voters. So I was born in Davis in 1987, and I grew up here. I went to UC San Diego and studied cognitive science, and it's kind of difficult to say like, what do you do, right? So because mostly I'm a researcher, and I'm a student of climate science, regenerative community design, ecosystem restoration and permaculture, history, agricultural systems, and other topics. So when I think about what I do, I spend about 40 hours a week researching these various areas. And I've been a community organizer as part of the grassroots effort in Davis to divest over $100 million from Wells Fargo during Standing Rock. And I was out there helping the water protectors, and I just feel like water is so important. We're going to talk about that later. Also, I'm a business owner, a project manager, and an online communications professional. And I also teach music, and I'm a musician. I lived at a co-op in Davis, and I got very familiar with the consensus facilitation process. And if we think it's hard to get a majority of 5, try getting like a consensus with 20 people in the room. So I think it's that's a very valuable experience for me. And so as a researcher, I came up with a framework for a local Green New Deal platform, and we're putting forward a vision for how we can address the climate crisis and for how we can become resilient as communities and to tackle the underlying issues that have plagued us for so long. And I really look forward to sharing that with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Michelle, could I just break in for a minute? Joyce will be, to the candidates, Joyce will be timing, so if you can look at her as you speak. She has a 30-second, 15-second, and 5-second sign for you. Thank you.
So question of you, Bob, did you want to put up the questions
Yes.
as well as we were doing this?
Yes.
So we'll launch into our first question. And if I understand the process correctly, then the first question will begin with Jim answering because Linda did the first one last time? Thank you, thank you. I'm new at this. Can you tell? All right, so we'll go to our first question after the opening statement, which is a question regarding climate change. The question asks, if elected, what would your major policy goals be with respect to addressing climate change? And we'll begin with Jim.
Well, the county is already doing a lot on climate change. We were one of the first counties to have a climate action plan. We also established Valley Clean Energy that provides an alternative source of energy that uses much less carbon than you get from PG&E. I'm also supporting taking over PG&E's infrastructure if we're able to do that so that we can have a successful effort at reducing carbon. The climate crisis is serious. We need to do more. I suggest that we set a goal of 100% renewable energy by 2030 and a commitment to net zero carbon by 2040. David Abramson and I have talked about this and agree. This is something, you set it as a goal, and then you get everybody together to try to figure out how to do it. Yolo County can't do it on its own, but what we can do is get together with the cities and other governmental organizations in the county, form a joint powers authority, and figure out how to get there. President Kennedy, when he announced that we're going to land a person on the moon by the end of the decade, pointed out that we're going to do it. That's our goal. He had no idea how we were going to do it, and guess what? The engineers didn't either. They heard it and they panicked, but they did it. And so I think that's what we need to do. I think we will set an example in Yolo County. Other local governments will do it, and it will be a change from the bottom up. This is a crisis that could cause mass starvation, could cause deaths of billions in the world, and we've got to be part of the solution.
Thank you. Same question regarding climate change, Dave.
Yeah, I was pleased to see that there were so many questions about the climate crisis. I've watched some of the presidential debates, and usually there's either 1 or 0, and this is on the national stage. So seeing all that going on the national level really inspired me to come up with a local plan for how we can address at least our little piece of the puzzle and to become more resilient for the changes that are already happening, making sure we have secure food and water systems. And basically, according to the International Panel of Climate Scientists, we have until 2050 worldwide to become completely fossil-free and net carbon and carbon negative, which means that if other places lag, then we need to move forward in the next 10 years. So what we're proposing is a decade of climate action and community resilience planning through all these different areas that you can see in our platform, including agricultural changes. And basically, the biggest problem that we face is our economic system, which is fundamentally built on extraction and on inequality. So what we need to do is we need to rethink our economic system to become more localized and in line with our planetary values. And there's a lot of information on this online. We put forward a very detailed platform, and I encourage you all to check that out.
Thank you. And same question on climate change, Linda.
I agree with. Darn buttons. I do agree that we need to set some goals and that we need to work towards actually actualizing those goals. I think all three of us agree on the year that it needs to be done and being carbon neutral and carbon negative. I think makes a lot of sense. But what I also know is what Yolo County does is fabulous, and we can be a leader, and we can use what's happening at UC Davis. We can partner with them because they have the research ability to make this happen, not just here in Yolo County, but worldwide. We can be the teachers for everybody here to take our knowledge out from the county. Because I love to think that we can be carbon neutral or carbon negative, but we are one small spot on the earth. But what we can do is spread that out with others. I want to be able to secure funding for our farmers to be able to transition to do new farming practices. You know, what are our use of cover crops? What are we doing for regeneration of our soil? We've got a farmer out there now, we've got the Rominger brothers who are doing quite a lot here in Yolo County already and winning awards for it. How can we spread that knowledge out to our other farmers and show them that you can still make a living and make a pretty good living, but be better stewards for our earth going forward? We are a leader in sustainability, and I commend all the actions that the county has taken with regard to this. But 5 seconds? So, let me just leave it with that and say, let us become a rural innovation hub where we can again create the answers for the rest of the world to build upon. Thank you.
Thank you. So you each have the opportunity for an additional 40-second comment. And I see David's hand. You'd like to make another comment.
Yes, please. I just wanted to say that this whole effort to address the climate crisis isn't something that's going to be done by the government. The government can set pieces in motion, but it really needs to be a community-wide collaboration involving every sector of society, of just everyday people who live in communities and buy things, of farmers. And we need to take a supportive tact, and we don't want to go into eco-austerity or eco-authoritarianism. We need to figure out ways that we can work with people, especially farmers, to make it economically viable and come up with solutions that are supportive.
Thank you. Anyone else for another 40-second comment on this, or should we move to the next one? Yes, Jim?
Yes, thank you.
Sorry.
Yeah, the counties stay on. one example, and I agree with what David just said, on the Delta Conservancy, which I've represented the county on for over 10 years, we have a project on the Delta Islands to deal with subsidence, meaning the islands are sinking into the river because of all the water that's sent to Los Angeles. What we're going to do is habitat restoration and habitat-friendly farming. That will keep the carbon in the ground, because right now it's escaping at a rate that's truly scary. It will be the equivalent of taking 500,000 vehicles off the road. That's the type of thing that we're doing and in collaboration with private parties and also local governments.
Thank you. Yes, Linda. It's on.
That button thing. Again, I agree with what David was saying, that it begins, government's not the solution, but government can help us move forward with our goals in that, you know, educating us, what more can we do? Again, educating our farmers, educating our business owners, educating all of our residents. So I want to concur with David on that I think that is a great step forward. Thank you.
Thank you. And I believe the rules are that they can do an additional 40 seconds. Thank you. David, did you have another?
Yeah, I just wanted to give a huge shout out to the youth climate movement, who's really been moving this whole thing forward. You know, we haven't really been addressing these issues for so long until the youth stood up and said, we want a livable future on this planet. So that really inspired me, and I just wanted to bring that into the conversation, that we're really following the youth here. We might have better technical solutions, but we really need to listen to the children and listen to the voice of generations that aren't even here yet, saying we want a livable future on this planet and make it the priority #1. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any additional follow-up comments on this question? Then let's move to the next question. Shifting gears, this question addresses the issue of seniors. And I believe now, David, will begin with you. And the question is, the voters would really like to hear from you on senior citizen services. For example, what can the county do to help seniors who are isolated and lonely integrate better into the community? And you have 90 seconds.
Yeah, I think this is a really important issue to address. And I think it gets at a fundamental, something we should look at in society, which is, you know, it's a lot better in Davis than other places, but we're very separate. We kind of have a culture of separation where we each live in our little individual units, and I think the loneliness issue and the sense of longing for community is something that affects everybody, and especially seniors. My grandma, fortunately, she lived out her last few years of her life right here in Davis, you know, close to our family, and that was really nice, and she had a supportive community there, but I know a lot of seniors, they don't have that opportunity, and I think we need to facilitate intergenerational gatherings and learning together in open spaces where we can have the youth, we can have young families, we can have all generations together in the same place in all kinds of ways. And also another issue that is really important is making sure that there's adequate public transportation from areas where seniors are, so they can get downtown, so they can have last mile transit. And really we need to survey the seniors and ask the seniors directly, what are the issues that you face? What are the barriers to achieving this sense, or to be able to go out and to, basically we need to design solutions for seniors that are by seniors, and we need to listen as the government.
Thank you. Linda, same question.
Well, again, in that going door to door and talking to people, the majority of people I've spoken to here have been seniors. I mean, they're the folks home, they're the folks answering the doors, and they want to talk. And do they want to talk because they're lonely, perhaps, and they have a lot to share, and I take that in from them. And what's concerning to me is that we don't have places for seniors. Well, we've got the senior center here, but I agree with what David was saying, of having more intergenerational activities and such going on. I lived a year in Turkey, and that took me aback, and how everybody comes together at celebrations, and I just never saw that here growing up. As you mentioned, we are all separate. But a couple of things that I'm looking at is, have you guys heard of the concept called shared kitchens? And it'd be something that I think would be fascinating to explore here in the county, in that we have this idea of domestic kitchens and culinary spaces and fostering community by bringing in young folks to use those kitchens, working with seniors, to kind of work together and going forward with that. Another idea is you being used in Boston, and that's Friendship Works, which connects seniors to young people. Opening up people's homes, you know, we've got many people living in large homes with not one person in the home and bringing others to come there as well. I'll go from there later. Thank you.
Thank you.
I can't see the
Oh,
cards.
your person's there. Logistics.
Thank you.
Jim, same question. Would you like me to repeat the question?
Sure.
Okay. So voters would like to hear from you on senior citizen services. For example, what can the county do to help seniors who are isolated and lonely integrate better into the community?
Thank you. Well, I've been chair of the Yolo Aging Commission for about 11 years. I also started the Yolo Healthy Aging Alliance to lobby for seniors and to provide education and community support. We've been doing a lot. Right now, we're working on getting a new adult day health care center. That's an essential service for keeping seniors in their home, because the senior who's taking care of the other person needs respite. The senior who has Alzheimer's or some other serious condition needs help with their medical care and companionship, and they get that at the Adult Day Healthcare Center, but it's overcrowded. There's a waiting list, and we have raised about half the money from private and public sources in order to accomplish that. I'm also working on disaster planning. Our Aging Commission spent the past year looking at problems with evacuating seniors and disabled people during disasters. We find that there's no consistent way of keeping track of people who need special help evacuating, and that's one of our recommendations. We're also taking a look at how care homes have plans for evacuations and making sure that we enforce standards for those homes that don't actually practice their plans, or say keep the key to the bus in a place where someone can find it. That was one reason seniors were abandoned in some of the other disasters. We are also looking at improving transportation for seniors. One of the things we're looking at is an Uber type service, but you wouldn't have to use an app. It would be on the phone, and there's money that will come to Yolo County that we're looking at spending on that. We're in the process of doing that. It's been such a pleasure to help seniors throughout my career, from a senior citizens law center to the Aging Alliance. I'd like to continue that work.
Thank you. And 40-second response, and Linda, firsthand.
Again, I'm walking around and talking to folks. Something came to mind in that over at Kennedy Place, over by Nugget, there's like an affordable housing area, and many seniors live there. And one of the issues that came up was they're all built with bathtubs with the shower in there. Seniors can't get into those bathtubs. They are not bathing. They're doing sponge baths. And I've talked to quite a few of the residents there, and they have tried and tried and tried to go to our elected officials and go to organizations, and they can't get anything to happen. And that is something that I would be listening to and making a change immediately. In fact, I've already started a process to do that. Thank you.
Any other, Jim?
Yes, thank you. We actually, through the Healthy Aging Alliance, have required in any new development that they apply the standards to make ease of use for seniors, such as in the bathrooms and ramps and all those requirements. We've asked the city to impose that on any new development, and on older developments. Whenever we hear about something, we will connect them up to somebody to help make improvements. Sometimes we use service clubs. Sometimes we use the area agency on aging. But that's what we're doing now.
Thank you. Any additional comments to this question, or shall we move on to the next question? Next question? All right. This question relates to county finance, and I believe this time I may have lost track. We begin with Linda? Okay, thank you. Sorry. County finance. Unfunded county liabilities are estimated to be $885 million. In light of these unfunded liabilities, what is your overall assessment of county finances? If elected, what policy goals would you pursue with respect to county finances? And we begin with Linda.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It is an issue. It's an issue here in the city of Davis, and it's obviously an issue with regard to the county. A lot lot of it having to do with our pension costs, healthcare costs of our workers. And I want to make sure people have pensions. I want to make sure people have healthcare. I think that's fundamental and something that I wish we could expand beyond into the private sector more. Instead of taking those things away, I think they should be given out more and more to our workers in general. But we need to recognize that those pensions for our county workers are funded by us, by the taxpayers. A couple of things have already happened at the county, by moving money, about 800 grand, into a pension reserve for a pension trust, so that we can then supplement those liabilities going forward. I would like to look at what our programs are at the county, and do we apply evidence-based type of practices when we're looking at which programs to go forward, or do we just go with our favorite pet projects? I want to take a look at those special funds, including our enterprise funds, to see how well they are being used and what their current balances are, any restrictions on those, and the planned and current uses of those balances. I want to audit the money coming from the county to providers and consultants. That's something like that's not even mentioned in our budget. And frankly, we're going to have to negotiate with our unions and talk with them about what more can we do together between the county and our workers. I'll end with that for now. Thanks.
Thank you. Jim, same question?
Yes, thank you. The reason there is a pension liability is that you have to go back to the fiscal crisis of 2008, the Wall Street stock market crash. These pension funds lost tremendous amounts of money, and since then have been playing catch up, trying to catch up with the amounts of money lost. In addition, PERS has become more conservative, and they probably need to be more conservative in terms of the amount of money set aside. So everybody has this increased pension liability. But what's Yolo County doing? We have set up a reserve fund, as Linda said. We're also paying early when we can, making early payments so we pay less interest. We set aside a special fund for the employee health liability. We set aside reserve funds and rainy day funds. Our credit rating as a county went from a B- to an A- with a favorable outlook. And the reason for that is we're doing exactly what we should do. This is like paying off a mortgage. You can't pay it off all at once. If you try to, you go bankrupt. But what you have to do is make regular payments on it, and if you're real good about your money, you make early payments, you make double payments, and that's what we're trying to do. But it's like paying a mortgage, and it's going to be paid off over time. Our county is healthy, we audit all of our practices, and by the way, we actually, as a board, ask that all of our programs be reviewed for evidence-based practices. We're scrutinizing everything that's done as a board, but thank you for the suggestion.
Thank you. David, same question. Would you like me to repeat the question?
No thanks, I got it.
Okay.
So I think when you look at unfunded liabilities, we're looking at a local reflection of a global economic system that is run in debt. Does anyone know how much debt the U.S. is in? 23 trillion. So this isn't like a local problem that Yolo County is dealing with. We're dealing with the fundamental nature of our economic system, which to me is this extractive version of capitalism where the money leaves and it never comes back. So it's not, to me, it's not like the pensions that are the problem. We need to look at the root issues of our economic system and re-envision what a strong local economy looks like. Right now we're in an economic system where profits are privatized, and then all the liabilities are being socialized, aka paid for by us. So I think what we need to do is reinvest in our communities locally, and if you go on our website, you can see what we're envisioning for circular economies. So we can deal with symptoms and quick fixes, economic shuffling, or we can get to the root of the issue, which is something that hasn't really been addressed. It's not saying I have all the answers for this, it's saying that we can figure this out together, and there are tools out there that will allow us to shift from this endless growth cycle economy towards something that is resilient, takes care of everybody, equitable, and in line with our ecological principles. I'll leave it there for now.
Thank you. And a 40-second response, Linda?
You know what? I do want to point out as well that Yolo County is an ag county. We're 85% agricultural land and open space. So that means it's taxed at a lower rate. I mean, it's traditionally always going to be that way going forward. So we have a provision called the Williamson Act that allows, the farmers to go forward and get taxed at a lower rate to keep more land and keep them farming their land. But we're going to need more contributions from the state, frankly, to compensate us for giving that over. I want to continue with open space and farmland, but that is another area that we can look at for funding. Thank you.
Yes, David?
I just want to talk about other, so we have funded liabilities and unfunded liabilities. So I just want to go into we spend $100 million per year in law and justice services, $14.5 million in prosecution budget, $21.5 million in probation, and $14 million of that for youth probation, $25 million in sheriff detention, and then we just spent $56 million in jail infrastructure improvements. So I think part of becoming economically viable as a county is to deal with the root issues as opposed to criminalization and invest in our communities that way.
Thank you. Any other response back on this question? Okay, then we'll move to the next question, which does, in fact, reflect criminal justice reform. And I believe this time we'll begin with Jim. And Jim, the question is, if elected, what specific actions would you urge the Board of Supervisors to take that would promote criminal justice reform while balancing the need to protect public safety? For example, should Yolo County continue to detain youth at juvenile hall, or look at alternative solutions to youth misbehavior like improved mental health services?
The answer is that we are already doing those things and we should do more. We have focused on mental health. In fact, I'm on a task force that is implementing what's called the National Stepping Up Program to identify ways to take people out of the criminal justice system at arrest, after arrest, in jail, at all stages of the system. And we have a roadmap for accomplishing that over the next few years. The first thing we did was to recommend funding an additional mental health court. The mental health court is fantastic because it takes people with a mental condition, they deliver services, it's like a family meeting. They come together and they talk about the progress that's made, what the person has been able to accomplish, and then they graduate from that and they go out without a criminal record and go on to successful lives in most cases. Also, the Drug Interdiction Court has a very similar role for people addicted to drugs. One of the things that I spearheaded was the ORR release, not the refugee program, but the Own Recognizance Release Program. And the Own Recognizance Release Program allows people to be released from jail while they're awaiting trial without having to put out bail. What they do is they study the risk factors. If someone is risky to commit another serious crime or too violent, they won't be let out. But if the risk factors are such that they're likely to show up and likely not to be a danger to the community, we release them. San Francisco just announced that they're doing that now. We started several years ago. I would like to see us continue to develop this type of program in the future.
Thank you. Same question, David?
Yeah, criminal justice reform it's a very important issue that I really care about, and I actually worked on Dean Johansson's campaign in 2018, and I was really inspired by the message he was putting out, of all these progressive DAs that are running on criminal justice reform. So I think for one, we've been criminalizing houselessness for so long, and it's so costly and inhumane, and these people have nowhere to go. So I think investing in our communities again, like I started saying in the last follow-up, is huge, and it actually ends up being less costly to build housing for homeless people than it does to criminalize it. And I think really promoting healthful communities. I have a friend, Alfred Melbourne, who started, he spent much of his adult life in prison, and then he started this program in West Sacramento called Three Sisters Gardens to help engage youth that were subject to at risk of joining gangs, and I just thought that was amazing, and I think we really need to start funding these things and get to the root issues of crime, and otherwise we'll just be constantly fighting the symptoms. And then I think, as San Francisco just did, we need to eliminate cash bail, and I have this little quote here, and it says, it's from The Nation, it says, "The crisis of mass incarceration in this country is fueled by cash bail. 95% of the growth in jail population between 2000 and 2014 was in pre-trial detention. and I'm out of time, but basically end cash bail.
Thank you. And Linda?
I have been campaigning to end cash bail for years. I've been writing to my legislators. I've been talking to anyone I can on this issue. That's one reason I know that Dean Johansson has endorsed me in this race, because of that strong stand that I have with regard to cash bail. I see it as a bankruptcy attorney, people coming to me and not being able to make ends meet, and being one paycheck away from homelessness, and being one paycheck away because they can't make their medical bills and such. I'm being attacked by a bug. But we have to do more. I mean, I appreciate the programs that the county's been doing, and I think they're a great place to start from, but we still have problems when we've had recent youth shootings just happening in the last 2 weeks. And youth coming down coming here to Davis, stealing cars to go back to other places and commit crimes. There's something off here, there's something wrong. And that's why we need to build our collaborations with the other communities, with the county, to do something about this youth violence. At the same time, we have a juvenile hall that right now has about 10 people in it, 10, 11 people, but it houses 90. Is that the best use of our resources? Something else can be done with that facility, something else can be done within the county with regard to that. And I think it's what we really must be focusing on are adverse childhood experiences, ACEs. And when we can focus on that and reduce childhood trauma, that's going to lead going forward to less crime, etc. Now my time is up. Thank you.
Follow-up response from anyone? Yes, Jim.
Yes, I agree with you on adverse childhood experiences. That's why we are trying to stop the pipeline of poor children, at-risk children to the prison system by delivering services prenatal to age 5 through the Yolo First 5. We are identifying at-risk families and providing help to not only the children, but to the parents, with home visiting, with whatever type of social services are necessary. And that's really the long-term solution. Short term, we can talk about closing the juvenile hall, but we shouldn't turn it over to the sheriff just for adult prisoners. That's happening on the short term. In the long term, there will be a need for some spaces, maybe 5 to 10, for people that commit serious crimes, the Daniel Marsh type people. We don't want them wandering around the community. But the rest of it can be used for programming for juveniles, like some other counties have done. We could do mental health treatment, we could do drug treatment, we could do job training, we could do apprenticeship programs by converting that facility to a true juvenile facility. And I'm also supporting a program to use the gymnasium for a youth development program. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Linda.
And that's great. And these ideas have been floating around for years, but they just haven't happened yet. And that's why I'm running. I want to make sure they get done. And that we just aren't talking about it for several years, but we're actually doing something about it. Thank you.
Well, actually, all of these programs are happening. And the particular program I mentioned with the First 5, we were able to double the amount of money on the program. We piloted in Davis, and it was so successful that we were able to raise up almost $1 million to extend it countywide. And that will really make a long-term difference in the problem. All these things are happening in Yolo County right now, and we're going to continue to work on them.
Thank you. Any additional responses? Yes, David?
Yeah, I think Yolo County could really improve in that currently we criminalize the youth at much higher rates than other counties, and criminalizing people of color. It's just, you look at the statistics for Yolo County, and I think we have so much room for improvement when it comes to really a just system of criminal justice, and I just wanted to say that.
Thank you. Are there any additional follow-ups to this question? No? Okay. Then we will move to the next question, and David, you'll be our first answer. And this question speaks to interjurisdictional collaboration. What is your view of the 2x2x2 county, city, university process to discuss common interests and issues, especially with respect to, but I suspect not limited to, farmland preservation, climate change, meeting UC Davis student housing needs, putting our region on the map as a national leader in sustainable and equitable food.
I really think this is the ticket here. This is what we need, especially when we start talking about these really complex issues. I understand how to bridge the gaps between these areas. So I really think in building a community collaboration is the way to go across all sectors. Thank you.
Thank you, and I apologize for the interruption. I don't
Oh,
think
no.
we figured out where it came from either, so sorry about that happening. Linda, same question?
Okay. I think it's great that we have these 2x2s, that the city meets with the county meets with the city, that we meet with the school districts, that we meet with UC. And I agree, we need to continue building upon that model of collaboration. But we need to have all the stakeholders at the table all the time. And that means, oh gosh, issues with the Delta, for example. Let's have the farmers there, along with the duck enthusiasts, the duck hunters, the waterfowl folks, the nonprofits. Bring us all together to talk about it, not just one group over another group, over another group, but all together at the same time. And let's not play a blame game. Let's not say, oh, well, I can't get involved because, or we as the county can't do it, that's a city issue, or no, we can't cross over, that's a UC issue. Let's invite them to the table. Let's just say, instead of it's not your fault, or it's not your fault, it is your fault, it is your fault, let's just do more of, thank you, I hear you have concerns, come on over and let's talk about them. Let's see what we can do moving forward. It has to be through collaboration. And again, to bring back, I think we're going to have to look at that with regard to positive youth development. When we're having issues of shootings happening here in the county, that's a major issue. What are we going to do? How are we going to bring our communities together to address that issue? Along with the climate change issues and housing issues, it's coming together and talking as a team. Thank you.
Thank you. And Jim, same question.
Okay, the 2x2x2s, these are government agencies working together, and it's not the total answer. I agree, we need to get everybody together, like we have on the Delta Conservancy, where we have farmers, we have citizen members, we have legislators, we have state city people. We even have people who walk in off the street, and we discuss those issues on a regular basis as to how to create sustainability for farming and habitat in our area. One example, though, of a successful 2x2x2 is the university, the city, and the county. We were running up against a problem where the university was simply not building enough housing, and that puts pressure on the Davis housing market, because every time Davis builds more houses, more students come in, and the university wasn't keeping up. They were at about 29% for a while of the population. They should have been at 50%. Well, I brought a resolution to challenge their long-range development plan, and this resulted in negotiations and the establishment of a 2x2x2. And as a result, we now have an enforceable agreement that the university will house 100% of its increased enrollment. And that will do a tremendous amount to take the pressure off the Davis housing market. So when we build houses in Davis, we can build for everybody else as well as the students.
Thank you. Follow-up response from anyone? 40 seconds. Yes, Linda?
I would say, with regard to the university housing, what it took was a critical lawsuit is what brought them to the table. And I hate to say that that's what we have to do sometimes, but that's what we have to do. That was a big issue during the city council race before. And many of us who were running at that time were advocating to sue them, like had been done in other communities throughout California. That's what brought them to the table. That's what got them involved. I want to be very clear about that because I was part of that. So I'll leave that there.
Additional comment? Yeah.
Well, we never actually threatened a lawsuit, but that was always a possibility. But I think what brought us together was a common understanding of the problem. And when we met, we talked, we sat actually in this room for 2 days, probably 24 hours, going through each of the issues. And what really brought us together is we came to an understanding. Lawsuits are fine, but they take years. I know that as an attorney. And when you can sit down and talk to people, that's how you resolve issues.
Thank you. Any additional comments on this question? All right. We'll move on to the next question. I believe, Linda, this is you first. Land use and housing. If elected, what would you do to promote the development of affordable housing while protecting farmland and open space? Is there a role for the county in meeting UC Davis student housing needs?
Housing is probably the number one thing I hear as I'm talking to voters throughout the district. Affordable housing specifically, what are we going to do about that? I know that when my wife first moved to Davis, she was in a split lot duplex. I think you rented a room first, then went to a split lot duplex, and now we have our home. But we don't have those entry-level ways of coming in anymore. And the county general plan itself has always put housing needs, housing development within each city and said, you guys do what you're going to do within each town. But what we have is we have unincorporated towns within the county. You know, think of Esparto or Gwenda, Knights Landing, Clarksburg, places like this that are directly under the county jurisdiction. Right now, there have been a couple of subdivisions that were approved to be built in Esparto. That approval happened several years ago before the financial crisis, and they were kind of put on hold because nobody was going to build during that time. But the county entered into agreements with them and saying, you know, here's how we want it done, here's, you know, the split with the county and the type of housing we want. We need to go back and look at those again. Let's not go with that same agreement we had with them from 10, 15, 20 years ago. Let's instead look at some environmental issues. Are they going to build carbon neutral? Are they going to be building affordable? What are some other things that can be done that are directly within the county's jurisdiction to do something about? Thank you.
Thank you. Jim, same land use and housing question.
Well, the county will require energy efficient standards, including solar panels in new houses, although that's required by the state now under some new rules. We think having enforceable county standards is still important. To create housing, I mentioned the 2x2x2 and the agreement with the university. That was a tremendous boon to Davis housing. But the other thing we do is encourage it near cities. Why? We don't want people commuting long distances to some hopscotch development out in the middle of nowhere for their housing. We want the housing to be close to where the jobs are and to seek job housing balances. The land around the city, much of it is county land, and we are working in partnership with the city of Davis when they have a project to make sure that county standards are met. One of those standards is protection of agricultural land, making sure we mitigate for the loss of agricultural land. Another is making sure that there is low-income housing, and in terms of an annexation, we can ask for that. We can make sure that they actually comply with the requirements for low or very low-income housing. We should also insist that the housing be done in such a way that it is affordable to as many people as possible. We have a lot of influence there. We can do some things in the rural areas, but again, it's not the solution because it's so far from jobs, and that's contrary to our environmental and carbon reduction goals.
Thank you. And David, same question?
Yeah. So I'm a renter, and every month I spend roughly about 50% of my income in rent. And so many people that I've talked to, it's been the case. In Davis, is about 50% renters. And the people that are renters and students are also doubly vulnerable because they don't have the time to work, enough to pay for a $1,800 apartment. And it's such a huge problem, and I don't think we've had renter representation to the standard that we need. And we focus so much on luxury development. You look at all these new developments in Davis in particular, it's all luxury development, and developers are paying into these in lieu fees in lieu of building the requisite affordable housing units. So I would do everything in my power if I were elected to close these in lieu loopholes and work with developers that want to that are going to fulfill their obligations, and also agree with Jim about this transit-oriented development where we have services within walking and biking distance, and we're really thinking about how we develop in a way that that's in line with our climate necessities and climate goals. So carbon neutral and focusing on the infill, and with a net zero target. Yeah.
Thank you. Follow-up responses, Linda?
The point of having jobs where workers are out, I think, is very important. So let's recognize we've got casino workers up in Cape Valley. We've got them, and they're commuting from Woodland, or they're commuting from Winters. They're commuting a long distance to get there. Why not have the housing closer to where they are working at? That's why I'm looking at Madison, why I'm looking at Esparta, because that's where the workers are at. We have a labor shortage here in the county for folks working in agriculture. A lot of it's because we don't have housing. Provide the housing and we will have people here to work in those fields, areas, fields, etc. I would like to see more density. I like to see us building up in Davis. I want to see that happening going forward. But that's going to be up to the city of Davis to determine within its own jurisdictional boundaries. Thank you.
Additional follow-up response, Jim?
I think that is one of the reasons we authorized the housing in Esparto, but I think we have to, and, you know, some of the casino workers come from much further away than Woodland. We have to take a look at where people are coming from and then how to meet those housing needs and to make sure that the housing and the jobs are close by, and that's what we've done. We had a project proposed in Dunnigan that we terminated because they promised jobs in the community, and the jobs were going to be an hour away, at least an hour and a half away.
Additional follow-up on this question? Yes, David?
Yeah, I think it really ties in with the environmental movement and the environmental justice in focusing on development. So we have requirements for every new development, but you look at say Aggie Research Campus, and how does that fit in with our knowledge of what we need to do locally to address the climate crisis? And we need to come up with rigorous standards that it's not just a yes, we want this, or no, we don't want it, but to look at the climate impacts and have a whole process for determining what will come with any new development. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional follow-up response on this question? No? Moving on to our final formal question, and we'll start with Jim, is water policy. Yolo County is in the heart of the Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta and therefore a key player in California water policy. Traditionally, the 4th District has played a significant role on the Board of Supervisors in water policy. What are the key water issues that confront our county? Why would you be the best person to lead Yolo County in water policy?
Well, I've worked on water issues, represented the board on those issues the entire time I've been on the board, and they're very complex and very controversial. For example, the state, in order to mitigate for all the water that they ship south, they kill a lot of fish, so then they have to mitigate, and they propose to do that in our county. And they wanted to flood into the Yolo bypass, and they're going to do that project. We've challenged it in several ways, though. If they do what we found, we did several studies, and we were able to show that if they terminate the additional flooding prior to March 15th, it won't impact the rice growing. If the prior plan going to June 15th, it would have completely potentially taken out our rice industry. So we negotiated a solution to that provided for earlier flooding so that they could take care of the fish population and do habitat there, but not affect the Yolo wildlife and its bird population, because that additional water is going to affect them and not take out our agriculture. I think I'm on a groundwater sustainability agency. We actually have a good groundwater supply in Yolo County compared to other areas. And our Yolo Conservancy is taking steps to limit the amounts of certain crops that are not conducive to protecting groundwater, such as the vineyards and orchards on a voluntary basis, because people accept money in order to do these habitat conservation easements.
Thank you. David, same question.
Yeah. So while I was out at Standing Rock, I learned this Lakota phrase, mini wachoni, which means water is life. And I've really been thinking about that ever since then. Water is life. So when we talk about our water, we really need to, who speaks for the water in government? What rights does our water have from pollution? And we really need to be viewing water as a living being. we used to live in, or California, the land known as California now, used to be a land that it was like the Garden of Eden. There were drinkable rivers, there were billions of birds and wildlife, and we've really reduced that largely through poor agricultural practice and extraction. But also, the problem is, one principle I've learned while studying permaculture is the problem is the solution. So when it comes to agriculture, we can actually we can help farmers transition to practices that regenerate groundwater, that actually they infiltrate water. Every 1% of soil organic matter, it can hold 15,000 gallons of water, usable water. So all these regenerative agriculture practices, they're habitat friendly. So to me, it's not necessarily almonds or tomatoes, it's how we do the practices. And we need to think in terms of ecosystems and resiliency.
Thank you. Linda, same question.
Watching her hand signals there. Water is an issue. Of course, water is life, but we have to recognize as well that we've been doing a lot of work here in groundwater monitoring and making sure that we have sufficient amounts for us going forward. We have two water systems here in the county. We've got the surface water, the canal system that we see, and then we also have the groundwater. And as Jim said, our groundwater reserves are looking pretty good. But an issue we have, however, is that it's voluntary as far as our farmers taking groundwater up for their crops. It's voluntary. Versus Central Valley areas, they are under stringent requirements to only take out so much. So I'm concerned about that going forward. Maybe we need to look at tightening up those restrictions. As far as crop growing, we have certain crops that we're growing. I think we're all watching the number of orchards going up, be it pistachios, almonds, etc. And that does change with regard to what type of water usage is, especially the almonds. But we can't really do a whole lot to stop farmers from planting something else. We don't have that power. I like to think that we could, but we just don't. With regard to the Yellow Basin, I'm on the Yellow Basin Foundation board, and we're very concerned about this flooding of the basin. Very concerned in the fact that we're not looking and taking care of the wildlife there, that we've mitigated to help our rice farmers, but not necessarily mitigated for the wildlife that people come out to enjoy and that we need. We're part of the Pacific Flyway. I'm out of time.
Any follow-up response? Yes, Jim?
Yes, I've also worked for 10 years with the Yellow Basin Foundation to make sure that their needs are met. And every single proposal that they made to mitigate damage from that project, I have brought to the State Department of Fish and Wildlife and have insisted that they resolve those problems as well as the problems for the farmers. I would also point out that the groundwater agency has the ability to do enforcement, but it's working in Yolo County because we have all of these farmers and landowners working together on a voluntary basis. If it stopped working, we would have to do enforcement, and the state would come in if we didn't do it. But we're ahead of everybody else because we know how to do it. It's the Yolo way. We work together.
Thank you. Any additional follow-up on this question? Yes, Linda.
One thing I like to look at is to explore more what Woodland's been doing with regard to groundwater catchments. You know, they've been kind of leading the way with that. Like to see what more that Davis could do and other communities in the county for capturing the water.
Thank you. Any additional follow-up on this question? Yes, David.
Yeah, I saw this really amazing map. It was called the United Watersheds of America, where it redraws straight state boundaries according to watersheds. I'm not proposing we do that, but I think it was really interesting to think in terms of watersheds, because what's happening in the mountains is affecting what's happening in the valleys. And you know, as far as almonds go, there's actually a way to grow almonds where they flood the fields, and they're doing a lot of research on this area. So almonds could even be a net water capture as well. So I really think we need to support farmers in terms of helping them adopt these more water-friendly and ecologically friendly practices.
Any additional follow-up on this question? Okay, that concludes the first part of our forum with the formal questions. And thank you all for your participation and minding the timing. We're going to take a 2 to 3 minute break now, so you can all stretch, get a glass of water, take it easy, and we'll collect up the audience questions and go to the second part of the forum. Thank you.